on the road. My gut tells me he's probably not going to play. Why would you risk him
I wouldn't.
at this point? And I think that's why you saw the number shift. But again, this was not a good game for us, although we hung in that game, for a long time late in that game. That especially that pick in the end zone at the end by Eddie Jackson really changed the outcome as far as the betting goes.
Yeah, watching this game at Sportsbook, it's funny when they decided to go for the field goal at the end instead of trying to get touchdown. You have like half the crowd is oh yeah, and the other half no.
That's what's great about watching it in Sportsbook.
It's just crazy. But one thing, and I agree with you, looking at the spot coming up for this week, going to San Francisco, horrible spot for them.
It is.
But if you notice now, with the Rams losing,
right. It changes everything. Right.
They now have an outside shot at getting the number 2 spot,
right.
And maybe yet Saints play tonight. We don't know what their outcome's going to be. They might have something to play for yet. So this is interesting because if they get a home game for that second one.
Oh, it's huge. And I think if you look at the Saints, as dominant as they've been too, I mean, they have maybe the toughest road. Although 2 of those 3 games are at home against the Steelers and against the Panthers. Panthers have been they're 5-1 at home. They've been dominant at home. This is a game the Panthers have to win tonight to get back in the wild card race. So it's not a easy task for the Saints.
No.
And you're right. The Bears could be sitting there hoping for a Saints or Ram loss to possibly get the number 2 seed.
Very important win for the Titans yesterday is to go in and shut down the Giants in the meadow, or whatever they call it now. The Giants got nothing in the game. The conditions were not good in this game. Tennessee, they managed to alter their play to suit the conditions. Got a great performance again out of Travis Henry.
Unreal.
The Giants were terrible.
Henry was great. I thought Mariota was so-so. The Giants turned it over a number of times when they had driven down the field and were in Tennessee territory. No Beckham again. You have to wonder. Not a good game for our side of the counter again. These early games weren't good. I think you have to wonder from a Giants perspective, does Eli get to start the last 2 games? Shomer says he does, but don't you have to see what he has?
Because whether they like it or not, I think this is the end for Eli. I really do. I think they're going to find another quarterback next year.
But don't you have to see what you have in Kyle Luetta? I think you do. They keep saying Beckham. They said Beckham was going to play this week. They're saying he's going to play next week. I have my doubts with him, similar to Aaron Rodgers. Why, for the guy who's the highest paid wide receiver in football and a team that's out of it, are you going to play him? Shepard's hurt at wide receiver. Yeah. All you really have is Barkley right now. You should line him up in the eye and give it to him 40 times because he's your best chance at being competitive in any game the last 2 weeks. But Tennessee right now is in a really good spot, guys, and they play the Redskins on Saturday, where they're double-digit favorites. I think they finish with the Colts, which would be a great game, Week 17. Might be the flex game if they decide to flex one this year. But it's a good Titan team right now, especially running the ball, playing defense. They've been a little Jekyll and Hyde all year, but I like the fact they're finally giving Henry the ball.
Yeah. They have to give them. They're not going to win with Mariota passing 12 of 20, 88 net yards. Not going to get it done moving forward, but they'll get a win next week against Washington.
Well, Jacksonville thought they would too this week and didn't get it. So,
no,
but Jacksonville has nothing to play.
And
the
Jaguars stink on offense, and the Redskins were able to score enough points, got a late field goal, won the game. Good win for Washington. I mean, they're 7-6, which is actually pretty good considering
7-7, I believe, right?
That's right. There's 2 games left. Yeah, 7-7. I mean, they're not going to make the playoffs, but at least they're still alive.
They're in the hunt, right?
Yeah, well,
when you think about it, I mean, they've talked about will they bring Gruden back or not. I think with all the injuries they've had, especially with Geis, who I thought going into the season could be as productive as Barkley, they lose him, you lose Alex Smith, you lose Jordan Reed, your Dotson, Crowder are hurt at wideout. I think he's done really a good job with what he's had to work with, guys.
And the offensive line, let's not forget that.
No, they're not a very good
Sharif
football
got
team.
hurt early. They've had a lot of injuries on both sides.
All right, let's move to Arizona and Atlanta because we won't take long to talk about this one. The Falcons finally found somebody they could beat up on, and they did. So maybe they got some frustration out of their system, but that's about all you can say.
It's funny, but we talked about it last week. We talked about Atlanta going to Green Bay after the coaching change, and that was a game where Green Bay might get some of those frustrations out. And I remember we talked about it last week. This was going to be a spot for Atlanta to get some of those frustrations out. They're still not a good football team on either side of the ball right now. Julio Jones was in and out of the lineup. They're not going to make the playoffs. But a game they had to win, and I don't think they make a coaching change, but I think they've been one of the bigger disappointments for me.
I think they'll make a staff change, though. I don't think Sarkisian's going to be back.
They might move on there. I could see that as well.
Yeah, this was one of those, Dave, you've heard me talk about it before, an ABC game. Arizona beat Green Bay. Green Bay beat Atlanta, so shouldn't Arizona cover against Atlanta? No, it doesn't work that way. They got rolled, and that could not have been a good outcome for the Books.
Was not, guys. This is a common theme. I got to get to the afternoon game here.
No, let's move to the games that made Chuck smile. And we'll start in San Francisco where the 49ers, look, Mullins played well yesterday. And so did the 49ers. I know it was a bit of a flat spot for Seattle. They've got more important stuff coming up. They pretty much locked down their playoff spot with the win in the prior week. And it showed yesterday. They were not a sharp team. 49ers, though, listen, here's what made it a good win. By the time it gets late, and now we're talking overtime, now Seattle's supposed to be into the game and take it over and win it, and they couldn't do it.
No, I mean, we've talked about it, I think, more this week than at any time this year about the flat spots because of where teams are from a playoff perspective. And you look at Seattle, who won all those games that they had to win when they beat Carolina and they beat Minnesota and when Green Bay was still in the hunt. All the games that were going to matter as far as a wild card spot and tiebreakers, they won. They've got that big showdown on national TV coming up Sunday Night Football against the Chiefs. It was a perfect letdown spot. Plus, they were on the road, and they had just dominated this team a couple of weeks ago in Seattle. So I think it was a good spot for San Francisco. Mullins has kind of had his up and downs, but I think Shanahan's done a great job with that team because you look at the injuries that they've had. But moving forward, now that Wilson and Beretta have played well in the backfield, you picked up Pettis. Kittle's a really good tight end. When you get Garoppolo back and you get McKinnon into that lineup with some health there, Goodwin's kind of the speed guy. I think they need one more wideout, but I think that San Francisco team, who was the Vogue team this year going in, can be that team again, depending on how healthy Jimmy Garoppolo was. But having the Seahawks lose outright was good for teasers, money line bets, parlays, and after that morning when it was kind of doom and gloom, we needed something to smile about, and that game kept us in it pretty well.
As I said off air before we came on, I was at a competing sports book yesterday watching the games, and I was the only person in the room, it felt like, that was on this side with San Francisco was one of my plays, which, by the way, your breakdown of that was my analysis again on the game. Spot on. If I ever get sick, can you do my write-up?
Absolutely. No worries at all.
But this is something that we want to emphasize, though. We talk about the math guys all the time, Dave. This is where you have to set math aside and look at situations. This was an absolute horrible spot for Seattle, and they played that way, made mistakes, and just beat this team 2 weeks ago, and San Francisco got it done. And, guys, the 49ers, they're 4-3 at home straight up this year. They're a different team at home than they are on the road.
So are the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Steelers
Those home and road splits for Big Ben are pretty dramatic, guys.
And you know what? They're kind of dramatic on the New England side this year. The Patriots have a losing record on the road. They've now lost. They're not going to win.
2 straight losses in December, which the first time I think has happened under Belichick.
They're not going to win 12 games for the first time since 2009. They're just not quite as good as they've been. They're aging a bit. The Steelers, look, they managed to make the big plays that mattered last night on both sides of the football. Well-deserved win for Pittsburgh, and one they really needed this win. I got to tell you, had they lost last night, I think they missed the playoffs. Now I think they'll make the playoffs.
Well, had they lost yesterday, they would have gone from the number 4 seed to the number 8 seed pretty quickly. And playing this week at New Orleans, which is not an easy task after New Orleans is coming from 3 straight road games. After the first 2 possessions for each team, I expected 50 points to be scored in that game at least. From New England's side, I'm still not panicking yet because you look at their schedule remaining. It's the Jets and Bills at home, 2 winnable games. Or I think it's Jets and Dolphins at home.
Yeah, but are they going to be a scary 11-5 team? Because I'll just throw this at you. Gronk looks like he's getting old.
And they looked different to me is that they didn't utilize James White out of the backfield like they did early in the season. All of a sudden now it's Sony Michel left, Sony Michel right, a lot of carries to Burkett. I don't know if that was because, hey, we know that our defense isn't that good, so we're going to try to keep them off the field. Is it a change in philosophy right now? But you look at them that I think they win the last 2 games. For me, Houston plays at Philly, which is no easy task.
Not now.
They end up tied because the Patriots beat them week 1. They own tiebreakers. I still think somehow the Patriots end up as the number 2 seed
in the
AFC. But I think a lot of people are panicking. It's still, when the postseason starts, you still have to prove to me that New England's not going to be the AFC representative, and I think they still have that swagger. You still have Brady. You still have Belichick. With a bunch of teams right now that it's wide open with everybody else in the AFC, I'm still, Kansas City's the favorite right now, and the Chargers are playing really well, but you can't discount the Patriots.
I'm not, but I will say this. If they have to go on the road, I don't think they're getting through it. They're just not a good road team anymore, and their defense is getting exposed on the road.
But if you play Mark. If you play Kansas City, say on the road, you're talking about the 32nd ranked defense.
Right.
So I'm not.
And
panicking.
Andy Reid in the playoffs.
Right. Yeah. I'm not panicking at this point. I still think that Kansas City right now, for me, is a team that, even though that defense hasn't played well, is going to get there in the AFC. Although this weekend is going to tell a big story because they're going to know if San Diego won or lost when they take the field Sunday night in Seattle. And if San Diego wins convincingly, there is going to be a lot of pressure on Patrick Mahomes and that young team against a good Seattle team at home with the 12th man. So it's going to shape up pretty good.
Chuck, you just broke my record for the number of times of calling the Chargers San Diego.
I
didn't think anybody would break it, but you did.
What were the odds of that?
You look at the Steeler game, the Hayden interception, that saved the season. I had a tweet ready to go because when Boswell missed the field goal,
Right.
And then they're coming down the field like a hot knife through butter, I said, I've seen this movie before, and I was ready to tweet out, as a Pittsburgh Steeler fan, this is like watching Groundhog Day on endless loop because I know how this ends. And then he got the miracle interception. They score. If the Patriots score there,
they win.
I think the Steelers fold because
I agree.
It's the same old story. But give it to Pittsburgh, and let's face it, New England, that was their fourth road game in the last 5 games. They looked like a tired team yesterday, a team that was physically beat up, and they're not the same team on the road, no question about that. We'll see what they do back at home this week, but I'll tell you what, Pittsburgh saved their season, but you want to talk about a spot. Now they got to go to the Saints. In Pittsburgh, this is 5 years in the making, this revenge game against the Patriots. Pittsburgh's going to have to find a way to pick themselves up off the mat quickly to go to the Saints, especially if the Saints are coming off a loss tonight.
Right. I think a lot changes for the Saints, though, because the Rams lost yesterday. Tonight's game isn't quite as critical. They know that they finished at home with the last 2 weeks, but it's going to be fun, I think, in the AFC. And, God, just think if somehow it ended up being the Los Angeles Chargers and the New Orleans Saints playing in Atlanta in February, Rivers against Breeze. Wouldn't
That'd
that
be fun,
an
wouldn't
interesting dynamic?
And we go to the Eagles and Rams, and the Magic Man is back again, Nick Foles. I can't explain it, but Foles, who was just awful in the preseason and then at the start of the regular season, looked pretty good last night. The Eagles shut down the Rams, and we mentioned this several times. We'll do it one more time. That Cup injury has proven to be absolutely enormous for the Rams offense.
Something is just Goff with the Rams.
Ooh.
You had that
I
one
saved
played.
that one up. I was hoping Marco didn't steal my notes. But, you look at the Rams the last 3 weeks, and they did not play well against Detroit, even though they got that win. I thought they were dominated against the Bears. They really smacked that offense. They prevented them from running the ball. They did have a couple of good shots on Jared Goff. They struggled yesterday. They really should have got beat by double digits. If he doesn't throw that interception down deep, at that point they go down by 19 or more. I think it's a moot point right now. Gurley's a little bit beat up. But, yeah, that injury to Kupp, I think.
Just changed the dynamic of the
we
offense.
talked about that, guys, as soon as it occurred. Last year he was their leading receiver. He led in touchdowns this year out of the slot, taking nothing away from Woods or Cooks. This is the guy that is the Jordy Nelson to Jared Goff of what Jordy was to Rodgers. He needs Cooper Kupp in that lineup to be the guy who's a nightmare matchup for linebackers and safeties. And without him, that whole offense has changed.
It really has. Now, but here's the thing, though. As bad as the Rams were last night, they're still in a position to maybe tie or go for a win if they want to go for 2. They've got plenty of time, but they fumbled a punt, and then they do get the ball back, and 2 guys decide to stay in bounds, catching the ball, get out of bounds. They should have had 3 shots at the end zone at the end of the game instead of 1. They're doing stuff that championship teams don't do.
Is this the Ram team, guys, that you think may have peaked too soon? When we put up the AFC NFC Super Bowl line, it was really based on Rams, Chiefs. Although the Saints were playing well, we still looked at the Saints who struggled against Tampa week 1, almost got beat by Cleveland week 2. It really took at least till the midseason or later for us to start saying this Saint team is really good. I'm just wondering if the Rams peaked a little bit soon.
Fortunately for the Rams, they get a soft spot this week against Arizona. But watching that game last night, once Wentz was announced out, earlier in the week, and you saw this line just keep climbing